There's our bush hog. It's an 8-foot. There's 2 spinners in there. The 3308. I had an older one too like this that I traded for this one, but I use this thing religiously. Once we get into later June, I like to get right before the Canadian thistle heads out. That's a tough one for us. There's a lot of that. In the recent years, we've been getting ahead of it pretty good. And I've noticed this year there's way less of it. So I don't think it'll ever be gone 100%, but it's nice to mow the old grass down that the cows didn't quite eat, get new growth. And we hooked this thing up to the 7405. And I got one of these quick hitches on here now. So when we need this tractor for other things, it's pretty quick to get this hooked up. We can virtually don't have to get off the tractor other than just to hook up the PTO shaft. So we're going to do some of that today again. You see those small trees growing in here, and if we let that go, it'll be like firewood in a year or two. It'll be just crazy. We'll have to probably take the fence apart to get it out of here, but if we cut it now while it's small, keep it down. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna talk about some weeds we got, and I may not have this proper term for everything, but this guy right here, and this is the only place on this farm it is. It's about an acre here of this 3-acre field. It's just kind of on this end. This, I think they call this yellow mustard, and it only gets dominant in the oats. And I haven't had oats on this field for almost 10 years, and it's still here. So however it got started, through a load of manure, or I mean, it could have fell out of somebody's combine at one point or something, but that's the only place it is on this farm. But the oats looks really good in it, because at one point I was thinking of actually baling the oats or something, but this oats is standing beautifully, unless it would lodge up and get real weedy. And then the other field looks excellent. Not a weed in it. So, but the corn has really been coming along in the hills here and on the bottoms, I guess, compared to other areas near us. I'm quite satisfied, I guess. And then in our pastures here, this is the bull thistle. This really big guy. And they're growing under the fences here, so they're going to have to be took out with a weed whacker or something, but they'll get like as tall as a person. And they're biannual, which means they, even if you cut them off, the same plant will grow back the next year, but only 2 years. And then he has to start from seed again. So if you got a mow, if you cut them off and you get every one of them within 2 years, you can almost eradicate them completely. Now, they'll come in with the birds or all kinds of ways. I mean, you buy hay, and there's a couple of those in your hay, and they get out with your manure. They'll come back that way. But anyway, that's a bull thistle. I'll get this big purple flower. Actually looks kind of beautiful on top afterwards, but they can really take over. And the one thing I've noticed, I think I was only like a teenager, my dad sent me out to cut this patch of bull thistle with this side mower we had on a Farmel 200. It was a pretty thick patch, and it's where the cows always went, all the milking cows always went, and they had all the grass trimmed down between all of them down to nothing, but them bull thistle were just thick. So I cut them all off. It was just like early July or something. It was really hot out. And I remember 2 days later going back to that spot, and all those thistle were gone. Those cows ate those thistle after they dried up. I would have never figured. It must be like toast or something. It must, after the sun shriveled them up. They apparently tasted good, but I thought that was something really interesting. And that's why if you bale some up in the hay, the cattle may eat them, but I don't think they're going to eat them green. So now there's another one, and the bull thistle is a little easier for me to control because we only got like one here and there, and if you get them right away you can control them. But this one here, this is Canadian thistle, and they're a little different. They're still a biannual. If they're a little finer, and where you see them, you'll see groves of them. And I think the same thing, if they get cut and the cows don't have anything better to eat, they will eat them after they dry. But they claim they grow like a grass, where they'll grow from the root, and the root of one it'll come up in another spot, kind of like quack grass and all that type of stuff. And that's where this one makes it a lot harder to control. And I try not to cut them until end of June, early July. Maybe even when this is starting to flower but not seeded yet. If you cut them too soon, what I've noticed happens is they will start in again, of course, and they will have enough time by September they can seed out again. Now, they may not be as many, but they're still, I mean, you think of how many thousand seeds are just on one. I mean, they basically can still survive, and that's kind of nature's way of still trying to keep itself going. I'm gonna guess they came in with the hay. Many old timers in some of those dry years way back, like in '88, I remember helping a guy unload a semi-load of grass hay. There was a few thistle in there. I mean, you took what you could get. And then, of course, you get a species from way up there that hasn't been around here. Now it's around here. I think back in the day when things didn't travel so much, you didn't see a lot of the weeds we see today. And there's one of those bull thistle. And he's in such a spot that I can't really drive there, so sometimes you'd take a big sigh out and you could get some of those. They're not too many, but if you let them go, there'll be 10 of them next year, and pretty soon the whole pasture will be. Here's one of our ponds, and this is another interesting thing. This pond wasn't here back when I bought this farm. I put these ponds in, and there's cattails growing in there, and we had this pond cleaned out, and we fenced it off and shaped it up. We put some breaker rock on the upper side here so it doesn't erode, and it looks good. It all worked out good, but where those cattails came from, I don't know. We are a long ways from some kind of bottoms. And then on the upper side here, we just did this. You can see that there's kind of a pile there laying of willow. There was some willow saplings growing on the upper end of this pond. And again, we are a long ways from the nearest willow tree. I couldn't even, the sakes, could be over a mile away. So that's kind of crazy how that stuff travels. So birds or wind, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing upstream like that. And then right here's another. These are like apple trees. And I believe they spread because the cows eat my apples in the fall, and they go other places and poop them back out. And I think that seed takes root the next year. And these things are everywhere. These are tough to get rid of. And it doesn't even really make a tree. There's a species of apple that's more of a, well, about looks like about the size of a cherry, and a real sour. The tree will be more of almost a shrub. And then I've learned to be more observant, in certain ones I'll let grow because I see the fruit on them is a better looking fruit. I like this tree here, kind of growing up on an embankment where we really can't drive, or that put on some pretty nice apples. And then it needs to get pruned again, because you got to prune apple trees to make them good. But But otherwise, you see these shrubs. There's another one. There's two over there and there. And those are becoming quite an issue. I think 20 years ago, we didn't have that here. I mean, if there was very little of it. Nothing that I would have said was a problem. But those are, I've seen pastures where you can't find the cattle in there. Cow had a calf in there, they'd be laying underneath that thing. And then there's the other pond. And we put those ponds in 92. We put that pond in, and that pond in. And then there's another small one. Now this is up behind our buildings, as you can kind of see here. There's another small one. I don't know if you can see it from here. Kind of at the bottom of this ravine over here. And it collects just runoff. There's no springs in these. And they all have overflow pipes. And it's just our way of controlling the water, which I just love it. At first I used to let the cows drink some out of there, but then they kind of ruined the banks and stuff, so we fenced them off. We got 10 ponds on this farm already. And we got one of them kind of farms, a lot of valleys and ravines. So anyway, I like up on this knob here, there was some of that Canadian thistle and what the cows didn't eat. And if you know cattle, if you got hills, they'll lay on the top or in the valley. They won't lay on the side hills. So on the side hills ends up being your finer grass where there's no manure really in it, so you don't get as much grass. But the grass on top or in the valleys really grows fast because of all the manure. So what I do is I set the shoes up higher on my discbine, and I cut it like I would be cutting hay. And just these patches, maybe 2 acre patch here, an acre patch there. And then a couple days later with the rake, and this is all in late June, early July. And then I'll rake it up and bale that. It makes beautiful heifer hay or dry cow hay, or even for some steers or a bull or something. But you'd be surprised how they eat that up. And like I was saying, the thistle, they'll eat that if it's dry. And then if there's a few weeds in there that ain't good, they just get thrown in for the manure, and they didn't seed out, see? That's the key, not to seed them out. So, and then what grows back here, it's just awesome. It just looks like a golf course. And I just love it. So we're really trying to manage our pastures. I think that's a big thing. If you're gonna graze, you still gotta do some mowing. You don't have to mow everything. Certain areas the cows clean down pretty good by themselves. And in some places I'll just mow like every other year. I mean, so we're not having to mow every stitch of this farm every year, but it's just a way of managing and getting better use out of what we have. usually what I have to bush hog is extremely steep and rugged, crooked, and there's a lot of ravines and knobs, and anywhere we couldn't make hay or have a respectable crop were used for pasture. And the stuff down here, that was hay, grass hay, and then there was electric fence. And you kind of see it came right there along this edge. And after the hay was made, we take that fence out, and then the cows just graze it for the rest of the year. So now I'm just cutting whatever the cows didn't eat on the permanent pastures to get new regrowth there. You really gotta kind of keep your head on straight with this stuff so you don't end up in some mishap with this, because I'm sure it's not going to be pretty if that would happen. So, I'm gonna keep going.